Neil deGrasse Tyson and Richard Dawkins discuss science, religion, and evolution. His thumbnail was quite interesting. Had to do with the idea of, are we designed? So these are both science-minded people. I'd like to see what they have to say. Be sure to subscribe to our channel, check the bell, and hit all. If you don't, you won't get notified every time we drop a reaction, so I hope you'll be here. Join in the community, join the family, like the video, comment down below, and of course, share this out there. Let's see what happens.
This is StarTalk. Neil deGrasse Tyson here, your personal astrophysicist, and today, I'm in conversation with the one, the only, Richard Dawkins. Richard, welcome back to my office.
Thank you very much.
This is like your fourth time here or something. I've lost count.
Something like
that. Something like that.
Always a pleasure, Neil.
Oh, welcome. I mean, we have a lot of catching up to do, I think. So recently, or at least this year, we lost Daniel Dennett, philosopher Daniel Dennett. I recently learned, I didn't read all of his books, I read some of them. He declared that Darwin's evolution by natural selection was the greatest idea anybody ever had. He's coming to it not as a biologist, but as a philosopher. So how do you reflect on that declaration?
He said that at the beginning of his book, Darwin's Dangerous Idea. And his point was that before Darwin came along, it seemed obvious to everyone that big, complicated things like humans and oak trees and things had to have an explanation in terms of design. And it was a huge stroke of insight for Darwin to see that it didn't, that the laws of physics alone could produce this prodigious amount of complexity filtered through this odd process of natural selection. To me, it's always been strange that it took so long, that it took until the middle of the 19th century for Darwin and Wallace, and even maybe one or two other people.
This is thousands of years of thought.
Yes,
and brilliant people have come before.
Aristotle could have had it and didn't. I mean, when you think how much cleverer you had to be to do what Newton did, or Leibniz, inventing calculus, working out about the laws of how gravity.
The Newton finger puppet here.
Okay, yeah. You'd think that somebody would have tumbled to evolution by natural selection before the middle of the 19th century, yet they didn't. So
that is a really interesting observation in and of itself.
Astonishing thing.
Are we going to thank Christianity for figuring that out too? Every time anything gets invented, or we got to thank Christianity. Thank you. We owe it to them in order for that to even be the case. No, like he said, Aristotle could have, but didn't. How many of these geographers or naturalists, if you will, were analyzing it the way that, and had the opportunities and did exactly the things that you see that Darwin did, and he was able to observe something very unique.
Did Daniel Dennett explain why it took that long? And if he didn't, what would be your explanation?
I don't remember whether he did. Well, first of all, Ernst Mayr, the great, he was here, I think.
Here at the American Museum of Natural History.
He thought it was because of essentialism. He thought that because of Aristotle and Plato, who thought that just because they thought like geometers, I mean, a right angle triangle is a kind of perfect form sort of hanging out there. And they thought that the perfect rabbit, the perfect rhinoceros was hanging out there just like a right angle triangle. So you couldn't imagine how a rabbit could turn into anything different. That was his explanation. That wouldn't be mine. I mean, I think it's just that.
That's an interesting one, though, because it speaks to the bias that we have observing nature. I mean, even in my field. So my people, including Copernicus, could not shake the idea of orbits that were perfect circles. They couldn't shake that. Why would God design a universe with a shape that wasn't geometrically perfect? So even Copernicus.
Think about that. These really bright men, really bright people, notice that it's not a perfect circle, or they have cognitive dissonance. Like, why wouldn't a perfect creator have a perfect circle? When you think about evolution and all the death that goes into making life where it is today, would a perfect creator, an intelligent designer, really make life through natural selection, or through this kind of gradual, struggling kind of process that we find on Earth? Come on.
Putting the sun back in the middle of the known universe had circular orbits, and since the orbits are not circles, they actually differed from predictions on the night sky. So that was a problem at the time. It's like Copernicus, this might work, but it still doesn't fit. The epicycles are doing much better. And so it wasn't instantly taken up, including the resistance, the church resistance, of course.
Of course, yes.
Earth wasn't in the middle anymore. Our counterpart to what I think you're describing is the urge to try to presume nature was perfect and then account for it with everything we know that is.
Yeah, I love this. Really interesting, because Plato did have forms. Can you imagine that your rabbit wasn't one time a rabbit? Or your dog wasn't at one time a dog? Or your human wasn't at one time human? I mean, it's really hard to imagine starting from complexity working backwards, which I think is what the struggle of many creationist theists have, is look at the complexity and my conscious experience is just too profound, and we have a hard time, even intuition has a hard time trying to like see that as the case, but the evidence, which acts counterintuitive, points in a different direction.
Back to why it took so long, and the idea of the perfect rabbit, the perfect rhinoceros, the perfect horse. In a way, that's a bit silly, because if you were to look at, a population of rabbits is pretty variable. And anyway, that was Ernst Mayr's explanation for why it took so long. Darwin did it by going via artificial selection. Everybody knew, farmers knew, horticulturalists knew, gardeners knew, you could change a rose, you could change a cabbage by just breeding. And really Darwin's insight was say you don't actually need a breeder. You don't need a human to do the breeding. Nature does it for you. Survival does it for you. It's not that difficult. It doesn't require any sort of higher mathematics or anything. And yet nobody got it until Darwin and Wallace.
And this is why I'm intrigued that Daniel Dennett, a philosopher, who, in principle, any philosopher could have come up with this, because unlike relativity and unlike quantum physics, which are realms of behavior of the universe, large and small, that you can't just deduce from your armchair. But evolution by natural selection could have been deduced in an armchair. It just wasn't.
It could. It's surprising that it didn't. It's interesting that both Darwin and Wallace were traveling naturalists, and they both were collectors in South America, both in South America. Wallace lost his entire South American collection in a fire. And then he went to the Far East. But they were both collectors of natural history specimens. And the other person who might have thought of it is Patrick Matthew, who was a gardener and an orchard keeper. But philosophers know they didn't do it.
They didn't, and they could have.
They could have, yes.
So you've written, I have a list here of like all your books. You've been out of control.
Well, as much as some people.
Was The Selfish Gene your first book?
Yes.
Back in 1976?
Yes.
That was the year I graduated high school.
Listen, I'm not gonna lie. I really enjoy Neil deGrasse Tyson's humor as he talks and teaches. He's funny. I really enjoy this guy.
Everybody made a big deal of this. It was my first presidential election that I could vote in, and I voted for Jimmy Carter. And I got to tell him this so cliched line, but when I met him, I said, "You were my first president that I voted for," and it was 1 month after my birthday I got to vote for him. So I thought I'd have a short exercise here. I'm going to mention your books. Could you just tell me what your favorite bit of that book was that you were communicating with the reader, if I may? So start off, The Selfish Gene.
Natural selection chooses between genes. Genes are the only thing, the information contained in genes. Digital information is the only thing that goes from generation to generation. That which survives is information, digital information. Some genes survive better than others. We, the bodies, we, the animals, we, the plants, are just the machines that are there to preserve the genes that ride inside us.
Whoa. Okay. So that reminds me of how I describe your gut bacteria. I say people want to think they're like top of the world. And I say, all you are to those bacteria is a darkened vessel of anaerobic fecal matter.
That's right. And it's pretty much the same with your genes. I mean, it's not fecal matter, it's testicular matter or ovarian matter. But yes.
Okay, so they're the ones carrying themselves forward.
Yes.
So if it's just information, can you imagine a day where the biology is no longer necessary and you just have the digital information stored or duplicated in some way?
Yes, certainly. You could. I mean, already you could preserve your entire genome. I mean, I've got my entire genome on one disk, and I once.
Do you have a backup? Just checking. Is it on the cloud? Is it?
The idea was I don't have a backup. The idea was it was a television program, and the conceit of the program was it was going to be posted into the family vault, the Dawkins family vault in the church at Chipping Norton.
Oh my gosh!
To be dug up in 1,000 years. And they were like
a time capsule.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. And the idea was that in 1,000 years they dig it up and make a duplicate of me. And of course, then we talk about why it wouldn't actually be me because it would just be an identical twin of me.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the idea.
Was it you? Yes, it must have been you. Because who else would do this? Posted on social media. It was if you had a book of a picture of your mother.
I think you're thinking of
your mother's mother.
Yeah, you pile them up. It's just one of many ways of dramatizing the enormity of geological time. I forget exactly how it goes. There are lots of ways of doing it. I mean,
no, but you do this, and if you keep doing it, one of those pictures is
a fish.
Is a fish.
And yet, every single generation looks like the previous one and the next one. There's no sudden discontinuity.
That's the problem when, like, my brother will always say, well, show me the in-between fossil. And I have to try and break this down and show there are certain species of creatures that you can tell are in between, but it's not so simple as like here and then 100 years before that, here's that transitional. No, it's so long on such a large scale, but there's a book called A Short History of Life on Earth, I think it's called. It's on Audible. If you haven't listened to it, you really should. It's fantastic. I learned so many interesting things about the gradual changes of life on Earth, from reptiles to birds, how their scales turn to feathers and how feathers turn to hair or fur eventually. And little things like mammals give birth inside their bodies to, they have the egg within, whereas reptiles lay the eggs outside. And I found it interesting that there are very few mammals left. Most mammals have them inside. Very few mammals actually lay eggs like the predecessors before, because it used to be laying eggs was the older way, and then mammals come along and they start to develop the life within the womb to protect the womb, or to protect the life, and for other reasons, natural selection taking place as to why that is. But there's certain mammals that don't. There might be certain reptiles or birds that share reptilian kind of attributes. There's so much interesting detail that makes you go, wow, we have living species today that show symbols of that transitional kind of life thing. But in history, of course, the fossils, that reflect this are even more profound when we look at the grand scale of all of that. And it's like, damn, how can anyone who's open to the truth not see this?
Many people can't grasp this. They think, well, there must have been a time when it stopped being a fish, and but there wasn't. It just gradually changed.
Okay, will you allow me, given this, which I completely understand, you have to allow me my explanation for the chicken and the egg. Okay. So I tell people, but I've never gotten your blessings on this. Can I use that word with you?
Yeah, of course. I'm all for blessings.
So I simply tell people, they say, what came first, chicken or the egg? I said, the egg. It was just laid by a bird that was not a chicken.
Yes.
That's a fair statement. I'm compressing a billion, 100 million years of time there.
Yes.
But at some point, you're going to say what comes out of the egg is a chicken. But that's a genetic alteration from the previous generation.
But there never was a moment when a bird that was not a chicken gave rise to a chicken. It never was.
Of course. So this is a very compressed.
Yes.
It's a shorthand for what you just said with the book of your ancestors.
Yes.
going back to the fish.
Yes. I mean, I once had a letter from a lawyer who said, roughly speaking, evolution can't be true because a species is defined as members can always interbreed with each other. And you can't imagine that there was a time when child generation was incapable of breeding with the previous generation. Of course, you couldn't. But he thought that meant that somehow evolution was invalid. He couldn't grasp
that everything was specially created.
Yeah. Everything is, it's a gradual process all the way through. And as you step back through your ancestors, they become slightly less like a human, but you never notice it as you walk past them. If you imagine...
I want to see a fish. It's just funny. So you skip ahead and there's a fish. You say, that's my parent.
Yes.
Yes. It's a little freaky for people.
But
you got to appreciate...
As you walk along the generations, you'd never see them getting more fish-like. It would just be so gradual, you would never notice it.
Because generations are only 30, 40 years, and we're talking billions.
Yes, that's right.
You needed deep time for evolution to do what it needed to do. Even in the 19th century, my people, the most we were going to give you as a biologist or even the geologist was 10 million years, 20 million at tops. We didn't know about energy contained inside the nucleus of the atom yet. Nuclear energy, which is how the sun makes fuel. We didn't know that at the time. So the best we could do was say it was a lump of coal.
Darwin's son, Charles Darwin's son, George, was one of the people who pointed out eventually that nuclear energy could do the trick.
Oh,
wow.
Nice little... Okay, thank him for it. Which of the Darwins explain?
I love that you have a physicist here granting the time it took to explain the facts we see about evolution. Like that's a fascinating thing that he says, well, we didn't give you guys enough time for this to take place. But now that we know better, based on the evidence of nuclear, what he just said, clearly there's a lot more time to the universe and life on Earth and all of this, the sun, etc., that evolution took place and you had enough time for this kind of stuff to happen.
For the first time.
Probably George. I'm not sure.
It was a Darwin. Yes. And Newton and Galileo did not understand tides. It was, even though they had all the gravity necessary to account for it. There's a subtle point with tides where if you look at any textbook, it'll have like the moon and Earth, and it'll have a tidal bulge pointing towards the moon.
Yes, that's wrong.
It's wrong.
Yes.
It doesn't. The moon would want that to happen, but that's not how it is.
Yes.
The tidal bulge is in advance of the moon in its orbit.
Yes.
Okay, and that's Earth's rotation pushing the tides ahead of the moon, and it's that interaction that has remarkable consequences. The moon is slowing down Earth's rotation. And Earth already slowed down the moon's rotation, so it's tidally locked to us.
We'll one day be tidally locked.
We'll be double tidally locked. And when that happens, then the tides will line up because we'll not be pushing it ahead of the moon. So somebody had to figure all that out.
Yes.
That was another Darwin. Thank you for your Darwins.
That's awesome. Okay, I guess commercial here. Let's skip ahead of this. Oh, yep, it's the news. Let's go. Next one.
Definition of mean, because that's not how anybody's using it today.
Unit of cultural inheritance, and the analog of the gene in cultural inheritance.
Okay, so this is communicated from one person to another.
Yes. And
certain memes have higher communicability.
I really wanted to say that because the whole book had been about the gene as the unit of selection, that's how I described it when you asked me earlier. It didn't have to be genes. It could be anything that is self-replicating. And nowadays, I would have used a computer virus as my analogy, probably, for the gene.
Mm-hmm.
But in those days, computer viruses, well, maybe they'd been invented. I didn't know about them anyway. So I used the unit of cultural inheritance. It's something like a tune.
M is for memory, so memory gene. It's a portmanteau of...
That's right. It comes from the same root as memory.
Okay. So if I say something, we have alligators in the New York City subway.
Yes. If that spreads, because it's a repeatable lie, or even might be true, whatever it is, if it spreads.
Whatever it is, doesn't matter what it is.
Doesn't matter. If it spreads, then it's a successful meme.
Because it's so interesting to me, I have to tell someone else.
Exactly.
Wow.
We love to tell stories which surprise people or amuse people, whether or not they're true.
So nowadays it's just an image of something kind of cool,
Yes, I'm rather sorry about that.
Yeah, no, I'm not. That's not your fault.
No.
But it's you've contributed to our culture. So the best of the memes are the ones that are spread around the most.
Yes.
There's a meme of me doing this. Okay.
Yes.
Like, I think, what is it called? Watch out, you got a badass over here. I never said that.
Okay.
And there is a picture of me doing this.
When it spreads.
It spread. And there are people in South America who saw me in the street. They were tourists. I said, "Oh, we know you from the meme." This is like 10 years ago or something. It's like, the meme, really? That's not even me. Why did they? So somehow that spread. I don't have any understanding of it.
I'll tell you my John Cleese story about that.
What is that?
Do you remember Fawlty Towers? And
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, there's an episode where some Germans visit the hotel, and Basil Fawlty is going, "Don't mention the war. Don't mention the war." And of course he does mention it. He was in, I think it was Munich airport, and he was going up the escalator, and there was a man way over there and going down the escalator, right across the hall, and he recognized him and he shouted, "Don't mention the war!"
Okay.
Spreading in Germany.
So that's a selfish gene. So let's move ahead here. The Blind Watchmaker. Oh, that's my favorite book of yours, if I may.
Okay. Well, The Watchmaker comes from William Paley, the theologian, who said that there must be a God because if you find a watch, you pick up the watch. He's crossing a heath, he said. You open it up. There's a great big pocket watch in those days.
Back when watches were watches.
Yes, that's right. And you see all the cogwheels and springs and things. It had to have a designer, of course it did. And so how much more would you say that of an eye?
I get it, right? I thought the same thing. And I still, sometimes I'm captivated by the complexity and go, golly, this all just like naturally came to be what this is. It almost feels like dreamlike in a way. Like, are these scientists correct? Are they right to think of it this way? And, you want to say yes because it seems to point that direction, but it's like sometimes you just go, whoa, this is so, it feels so too good to be true. Homeostasis, like is this really just naturally what came to be? And I'm thinking about this. It's just mind-boggling. Like, could there be something we primates with our senses aren't aware of, can't measure, that's there? No way to know if it is or isn't, I guess, unless we can somehow with like some tools beyond our own awareness tap into that thing. But like, it just makes you wonder: is there something more? When you think about that stuff, that's kind of what my brain does sometimes. What about you? I'm going to end this part of the reaction here. Neil deGrasse Tyson, Richard Dawkins talking about was there a creator, and they're going to get into more depth here as we continue to react to the rest of this video. But I really want to hear from you. What do you think so far? I love being a fly on the wall. Sorry if I'm not commenting too much because, to be honest, I'm enjoying this reaction so much. I don't really know what else to say. Other than just I'm in awe of some of the interesting ideas and the history that they're getting into. I hope you are as well. Please subscribe and become part of our family, and check the bell, hit all so you're notified. You can like the video, share the video, and drop a comment. All are 3 ways free to help us grow this channel, Myth Vision Reacts. I sure hope to see you there. Please, until next time, see you then.